If you have a case with USCIS and it's a green card application, citizenship application case, just know you are most likely going to have an interview. And in this video, I'm going to give you tips for testifying at your USCIS interview. I have videos on the type of questions to expect at a marriage-based green card interview, but in this one, it's just tips on things to know before you get to your interview and how to behave while you're at your interview. I am U.S. immigration attorney Lilian Chukwurah, and I help my clients get green cards and citizenships for themselves and their families using the U.S. immigration law system. First thing you need to know is you do not have to go to your interview with an attorney, but I highly recommend it because it can make a difference in how your interview goes. If you are going to your interview with an attorney, just remember, your attorney cannot testify for you. You have to answer the questions that the officer is asking. However, if there's clarifications that need to be made or legal arguments that need to be made, that's where your attorney can make a difference. The attorney is there to observe the interview and will only intercede or interject if they feel that the USCIS officer is acting in a way that they should not be. If the attorney feels that there's a miscommunication, they can ask for clarification and help to correct that miscommunication. Also, if the attorney feels that there is need to clarify the law to the officer, the attorney can intercede on your behalf to explain how you still qualify for the green card, for the citizenship based on the law. If you're appearing at your interview and you know your attorney is going to be there in person, make sure that you let the officer know when they call you in. If your attorney is running behind or the officer is ahead of schedule, you want to make sure that you let them know that your attorney is on the way so that they do not interview you without your attorney present. If you do not mention that you need to wait for your attorney, they will let you come into the office and start your interview. If your attorney is appearing by telephone, make sure that you let the officer know that they can either call your attorney or have you call the attorney. They cannot start the interview until that call is made. You do have a right to be represented, and they cannot go ahead and do your interview without you being able to have your attorney present. If you are nervous about this, about, insisting on your attorney being present either in person or by telephone, talk to your attorney first and make sure that you are equipped on how to handle this situation. I tell my clients all the time, you have a right to be represented by your attorney. And USCIS recognizes this right. If the USCIS officer insists on interviewing you without your attorney present, make sure that you are vocal about this and that you call your attorney and let them know what is going on. Okay? Do not go into the interview without your attorney and without informing your attorney of the situation. Whether you are having an attorney present or you are going to the interview by yourself, these are tips that I want you to keep in mind while you are at your interview, because these are going to make a difference to the outcome of your interview. Number one, and I always start with this, is tell the truth. Okay, always tell the truth, because if USCIS has information that contradicts what you're saying, that is a misrepresentation. You may end up needing a waiver when it's not even necessary. Okay, so you want to make sure that you are being honest in your interview. Listen carefully to the questions. Do not answer a question unless you fully understand it. Okay, if you do not understand the question, if you do not understand a certain phrase that an officer uses, do not answer the question. Tell the officer that you did not understand the question and ask them to repeat it or explain it. So sometimes they may use legalese words like, oh, were you ever convicted of a crime? Well, if you've ever been arrested, you may think that that's the same thing, but it is not. Okay, an arrest and a conviction are two separate things. And I've seen cases where someone will go to an interview, the officer talks about a conviction, and they're talking about an arrest, and they say, yes, I've been arrested. I've been convicted, when they actually were not convicted of the crime for immigration purposes. Sometimes the issue is you do not understand the law, right? How it works. Sometimes something that's a conviction in your eyes may not actually be a conviction for immigration purposes. So it's always important to make that clear. And that's also why having a lawyer at your interview is so important, because I've had cases where I had to have the court documents ready to make the argument that it was not a conviction that should affect the immigration process. If you do not know the answer to a question that the officer is asking you, you can say that you do not know or you do not remember. Be honest in your answers. Do not try to make up an answer, because that's, again, you want to be honest, okay? So don't try to make up an answer and think that the officer expects you to have an answer. It's okay to not remember. It's okay to not know. But do not make up an answer. Do not guess an answer. This is so important that you do not guess, because they're going to hold you to it as if you're saying that this is the answer. Okay? If you do not remember, the exact date that something happened, you can say you do not remember the exact date something happened. Do not try to guess, because now if your guess is off from your spouse's guess, they will use that to say that you two do not know each other. So it's really important that if you do not know the answer, just say you don't know or you do not remember. Do not guess. Fourth thing is only answer the question that the officer is asking you. Okay? I tell people this all the time because we like to explain ourselves. I'm from Nigeria. Like when someone asks us a question, we like to explain, not just answer the question, but explain why that is our answer, because we think that will make the answer more full, right? That will make us look more credible. But when you are in your immigration interview, answer the question that's asked. You do not want to over explain. If the officer wants further clarifications, they will ask you, okay? Do not feel like you have to over explain. If it's a question that you can answer by just saying yes or no, please only say yes or no. This is so important. Do not try to explain. Do not ramble on and give long answers. If it's a question that can just be answered with a yes or no, your answer should either be yes or no, and you stop. Okay? And you stop. Did you have a wedding? Yes. Did people attend the wedding? Yes. Now the officer can ask you who attended the wedding, but don't go to did people attend your wedding? Yes, so and so, and the whole town came to the wedding. Don't give long explanations. Just if it's a yes or no question, give a yes or no answer. But on the other hand, if it is a simple short answer and it fully answers the question, then you can use your best judgment on whether that is okay or not. But please, no long answers. If it's a yes or no, my rule of thumb is if you can answer it with a yes or no, answer it with a yes or no. The officer can always give you follow-up questions. Next thing you need to do is be extremely familiar with your applications, okay? With my clients, once we finish the application and mail it to USCIS, we upload it to the client portal so they can see every single page that we send to USCIS. Because if you can see every single page that we sent to USCIS, you can see what your answers were, what documents we sent in, all of that. You need to be familiar with your application. You need to take time to review it carefully before the interview, because most of the questions the officer is going to ask you is going to come from that application. So you want to make sure that you are as familiar with it as possible. And if there's anything that needs to be updated, you need to make sure you're ready to update it at the interview. By the way, if you are getting value out of this video, don't forget to hit that like button. If you have questions, put them in the comments. And if you would like to work with me on your green card application journey or your citizenship journey, go ahead and schedule a strategy session with me. You can do that by going to my website, lilylegal.com, or calling my office at 508-443-1788. If you do go to my website, click on contact us, and you can pick a date and time that works best for you for us to chat and see how I can help you in your immigration journey. Now back to the video. The next thing is if you're reviewing your application before the interview and you notice that there's a mistake, either on dates, places, whatever the mistake is, you need to be prepared to tell the officer that there was a mistake at your interview. Okay, whatever the mistake is, you need to make sure that you are documenting it so that when you get to the interview, you are able to update it. If you are working with a lawyer, please let us know immediately so that we can have an updated application ready to go for the interview. Because typically we are able to update your application because we have your information. And if there's anything that has changed or anything that is a mistake, we can update that application and take it with us to the interview. And when the officer gets to that section, we can give them that updated section and explain that there was a mistake and this is a correction of that mistake. Going back to my first point, which is to be honest. If you find that there's a mistake on your application, you need to correct that mistake. Do not go to your interview and lie to match your application. You want to match the facts as they are, right? Your application needs to match the truth. If there's a mistake on your application, don't stick with the mistake. Stick with the truth. It is really important, like when I say to be honest in your interview, in your answers on your application, this can affect future applications. If you want to apply for citizenship, if you want to apply for family, all of those things matter. And if you made a mistake on your first application for a green card, it's going to throw off anything else that you have going on in the future. So you really want to make sure that you are correcting the record, you are correcting your application and any mistakes at your interview. When you are in your interview and the officer is asking you questions and you do not remember something, but you know that you have a document that you can look at to be able to refresh your memory or to give a more complete answer, ask the officer if you can look at it. A good example of this is if you have a social security number and you have not memorized it, you get to your interview and the officer is asking you, what is your social security number? You don't know because you didn't memorize it. You can ask the officer, you can tell the officer, I have my card. Can I look at it to tell you what the number is because I don't have it memorized? That is okay. Okay? That is perfectly okay. Another example is if the officer asks you, when was the last time you sent money to family, right? And you know that you have records of it, like either from your bank statements or from another, MoneyGram or things like that. You can ask the officer, I don't remember the exact date. I know it's in May, but I can look at this to tell you the exact transaction. Okay, so that's places where if you don't remember exact dates, but there's documentation of that date, you can tell the officer that you need to look at the document. Now, this is not going to work for your spouse's date of birth, your date of marriage, and things like that. Those are things that the officer expects you to know. So Keep that in mind. So just because you can refresh your memory with certain documents, you can't really do it for things that you are just supposed to know, like your spouse's date of birth or your date of marriage, things like that. Next thing is dress nicely. So when it comes to your USCIS interview, people ask me, what should I wear? Is this okay? Is this not okay? So here's my rule of thumb. You want to dress business casual or nicer. Like I've had people come in with suits. I've had people come in with just nice dress pants and a button-up shirt, a dress that's covered up. I've had all of that. I have also, because again, a lot of my clients are African, and I have had a couple have matching outfits that they sold specifically for their interview. Like that's how important it was to them to dress up and just present themselves nicely. So you really want to dress nicely. Typically no shorts, t-shirts that are ripped, things like that. If you're wearing jeans and a nice top, like again, business casual is really what you want to go for. This next tip goes without saying. Please be on time for your interview. If you're going with an attorney, they will tell you when and where to meet them. I typically tell my clients to be there at least 15 minutes ahead of time, if not 30 minutes ahead of time. If there's documents they need to give me the day of for me to look at to make sure it's okay, we're typically doing 30 minutes before. But if I already have all the documents and they're just bringing the originals to the interview, then 15 minutes ahead of time, typically in front of the building or right at the lobby of the building is perfectly fine. But you really want to be on time. 15 minutes early, always a good idea. I typically show up 30 minutes early, regardless of if I'm meeting my clients 15 minutes early or not, because listen, the offices that are close to me are an hour away. Okay, I have 3 USCIS offices that are close to where my office is. And by close, I mean an hour close. And some of my interviews are like 8 a.m. So that means for me to get there on time, I need to leave very early. So I always tell my clients, you want to leave 30 minutes to an hour early, because you want to make sure that if there's any traffic, any accidents on the highway, that you are giving yourself enough space, enough room to get there on time. And then if there's any accidents or issues, you are letting me know ahead of time, because that way, if I get there before you, I can always let the officers know what is going on. And I've had this exact situation happen where the clients actually went to the wrong office. They just put it on the on Google and it took them somewhere completely different, and they had to basically double back to come to the right location. In that situation, we were about 30 minutes late for the interview. We had to explain to the officer why they were late, and the officer was gracious enough to still interview them, okay? Because sometimes they will just reschedule you, right, if you're too late. But they were able to still accommodate them and do the interview. And, right, you don't want to not show up, please, right? You want to be on time, but you also don't want to not show up. Right? If you're running 10 minutes late, don't just be like, you know what, I'm already late. Maybe it's not, let me just not go and call them and tell them that I'm not. Nope. Show up, because the officer may still choose to interview you, and then they will have a record that you did come, you just missed the time and they weren't able to accommodate you. That will make it easier for them to reschedule you than if you just don't show up at all. Because if you don't show up for your interview, they can say that you abandoned your application and deny your case. Yeah. So you want to show up even if you're running behind, because the officer has the latitude to still interview you or to put you in line for a reschedule. When you are going to your interview, you want to bring your interview appointment notice. When you are scheduled for an interview, USCIS sends you a notice for the appointment. You need to take that notice with you to the interview. Please do not leave it at home. Bring all your original documents. So anything you send to USCIS, birth certificates, marriage certificates, death certificates, divorce certificates, you want to make sure that you have the originals with you for the interview. Because when you are filing your case, you're only sending a copy of those documents to USCIS. But when you have your interview, you need to take the originals of those documents to USCIS. They will look at them and give it back to you, okay? They're not going to keep your originals, but you need to take it with you. If there's any of your originals that are not in English, and it's been translated, you need to take that translation with you as well. And to be on the safe side, and I typically do this for my clients, any documents that I already have, I bring copies of it to the interview, because sometimes something doesn't make it into the file, and if the officer is not able to just make a copy, right now most of them are able to take a copy of your original, but sometimes they're not able to. So I usually have a copy of everything that we sent in for the interview, just in case something does not make it into the file. But I also tell my clients to bring the original and the copy. Do not assume that your lawyer will bring copies of everything, because there may be a document that you're bringing that you haven't already shared with your lawyer, or your lawyer doesn't have the copy of. So just make sure you're doing that. When you are bringing updated bank statements and things like that, please make copies, because they're going to keep it. All right, make copies. Something else is, when you are bringing those documents, it's really good to put them in a folder and label it, so that way if the officer asks for a specific document, you're able to easily look in that folder, look for the label, and pull it out, because you're gonna be nervous. You are going to be nervous at your interview, and sometimes people do get overwhelmed when the officer is asking for something and they have a stack of documents that is not organized, and they have to sift through everything. So you want to make sure that you have everything ready and arranged in a way that you can easily find whatever document the officer may want. So that's really, really important to remember. Those are all the tips I have for you for testifying at a USCIS interview. In my next video, we're going to go in depth on the type of questions to expect at your marriage-based interview, because those are going to be different from just this preparation and this tips video. Okay, we're going to break down the type of questions, what those questions could be. I have like a checklist of over 100 questions that I can possibly ask my clients to help them prepare. So make sure you stay tuned for that video. Thank you for watching this video. And like always, if you have immigration questions and you want to see if we can help you with your journey, go ahead and go to my website, lilylegal.com, and click on Contact Us and schedule a date and time for us to speak. Once again, I am Attorney Lilian Chukwurah, and I help my clients get green cards and citizenships, and we do it pretty well. Bye.